Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
I'd like to welcome Bruce Boxleitner to the show. How are you doing, Bruce?
I'm very good, thank you. Very, very good.
Okay, well, first off, I'd just like to ask you the question. I'd like to ask this a lot of actors, because I know that a lot of actors have had a different journey into acting. So I'm just wondering, how did you get into the acting? Is it something you always wanted to do, or did you just sort of find out at a certain age that you kind of had the bug?
Well, I think I fell into it in high school here. I've always been an imaginative. I was always an imaginative child. I always liked movies, television. I was an avid television watcher back then in the 60s, and so I mean, I just sort of naturally fell into it. I kind of wandered into an audition in I think it was my sophomore year, second year of high school, and I tried out for the fall play and got it, which was unusual, I guess, for a sophomore at that time at that school. But anyway, I got it, and I don't know why I wandered in there. I think there were a lot of girls in the drama guild. I had played baseball. I was a common American kid at that time. I played a lot of baseball, and I didn't make it on the basketball team. So I was looking for something else. But I think what appealed to me is there was a way in which I could not be Bruce Boxleitner, and I could and through a character I could express myself. And I think I learned that very early on. Not that I was trying to hide from whom I was, but it was a great way to express yourself, And when you're a teenager, you want to get a lot of things out. And, there are very articulate ways of doing it other than that. And so I know a lot of my buddies got into music and bands, and I kind of played with that stuff too with them. But my main thing was the drama in school, and that kind of set me on my course. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I started to realize early on that maybe I wanted to be an actor, at least by the end of high school. I wasn't a great student because of it, but and then I managed to get into a drama school in Chicago, which I lived near, and Illinois, and it was prestigious. It was for regional theater, for training in the classics and things like that. So I had a really nice, solid background in that way. And I started after I left the Goodman Theater there. I started to work my way in local theater, and then eventually wound up in a play that took me to Broadway. And at a very young age, I was just 21, 22. And I think I turned 21 in New York. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a long time ago.
Wow.
And that sort of set me on my way. I mean, I was always trying out for young parts. I had done very well in the Broadway show that I was in. I had the lead in fact, with another young guy named Ted Danson, but I don't know whatever happened to him. I think he had a TV series called Cheers or something like that. But anyway, he did very well for himself. But at that time, we were all just young actors hitting around off Broadway and trying to make our mark. And then eventually I just ended up, for various reasons, I ended up going out west and saying, I'm going to give it a try out in Hollywood. If I have to sleep on a park bench, it's a lot warmer out there than it is in New York City. So, but basically, I had auditioned for films. I was auditioning for plays and stuff like that in New York, and it seemed like they kept casting everybody out in Los Angeles, even though they would come to New York to look at new talent. And somebody suggested, well, why don't you go out there? And it's something I had dreamed of doing anyway, and I just did it.
Well, one film that probably propelled you into into being a well-known face internationally was Tron, which I believe didn't do so well, at the time it came out in 1982. What I'm curious about is, when you got the script for Tron, did you actually have doubts about it? Did you have trouble understanding it? Because there's a lot of language in Tron, such as user and stuff like that, to do with
and programs and all that. Yeah, I agree. I didn't know what it was saying. But there was a lot of history before that. I was on a Western TV series that I think played over there as well. That was very popular. So I had already a good profile going in the business. I was one of the many thousands that met on the original Star Wars. I remember that. And I remember standing in line when it opened and going, oh, shoot. boy, this was a great role. I wish I had gotten it. That was Luke Skywalker. But in looking back on it now, I'm glad I didn't, because I wouldn't be talking to you now, probably. Unfortunately, that role kind of had a curse alongside it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't understand Tron whatsoever, but it was a big Disney feature. I kind of told my agent, I think we should turn it down, and he told me I was an idiot. I was doing a Western when I was out in the middle of Arizona reading this script, sitting on a horse, and I put it in my saddlebag, going, "Oh, this is a piece of crap. I'm not going to do this." Then I got back to Los Angeles after I was done shooting, and I met at Disney, and I met Steven Lisberger and production team, and I knew that Jeff Bridges was in it, was signed, and I always admired him as a contemporary. I always admired his work. I had worked with his father prior to that, Lloyd Bridges, and I knew all about him. So I thought, great. And then I was looking at it more. I'm going, it's kind of Star Wars, only it's not in outer space. It looks like it's in a computer world, whatever the heck that is. But it looks kind of cool. And I saw some, sketches and stuff. And then I saw a little bit of footage that they had compiled to show what the process was. And it was fascinating. And I went, you know what? This is something very different. If they're interested in me, I ought to do it. And I did. And we had such high expectations, and we were breaking such new ground. I wasn't really aware of that so much at the time as just afterwards. And then it kind of came out with this sort of lackluster performance. And but strangely enough, now 30 years later, I might add, it is more popular than ever. So it's amazing. It's an amazing thing to me.
I mean, the first time I seen it was probably around about 1984 when it came out on video. And I put it on, and and I pretty much got it right away, because I was going through a bit of a computer geek stage back then, so I knew what the lingo was. So
but you understood it though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because did you play any of the arcade games and stuff like that?
I used to actually have the Tron game on an old Intellivision system that I used to own.
Okay. So, I mean, but you did get it. I mean, at the time that we were doing that movie, and when it came out, you have to understand, and I used this, and maybe you've heard it before, I said all those kids that were putting quarters into those arcade machines at the time, they got it. It's just that the Hollywood intelligentsia, the critical intelligentsia, didn't know what to do with it, and so they came out not liking it. And because Disney was, there was a lot of background going on there politically. Disney was not at a good time in its studio life. It was in a really down time. Nothing was really working. They weren't making the product. A lot of big stars were not coming to it. To work there. So it was in a real down time. And that's why I also credit them with being visionary enough to take on Steven Lisberger's this little project that he came out from Boston in his car with, this little idea for a movie, and that he followed through with. And and then, like I said, it didn't come out with a great, they just panned it more or less. And it also came out in a summer, I think, full of tremendous movies. There were other movies that were kind of financial bomb. Blade Runner wasn't received very well as well. That guy Ridley Scott, British director, who I think is one of the greatest.
Yep.
It just, there were a number of movies. I think that stupid little alien named E.T. sucked the oxygen out of the whole summer of that year. I hate that bloody thing. By the way, Ian, you don't see any sequels, an animated series to E.T. Now, do you?
Thank God for
okay.
that.
I made my point right there.
I've only seen E.T. the one time, and that was in the theater, and I was so traumatized by it that every time it's on the television now, I just switch the channel. I watch it again.
Well, we didn't traumatize you with Tron.
No.
We tried to entertain you, and so, it kind of happened, and I know, Jeff went on, and I went on, Cindy, everybody we went on with other things. It was just a job at that time. But now, 30 years later, it's so appreciated by an entire different generation that a lot of them weren't even around. Yeah. Their parents were kids. And it just amazes me, man. It just amazes me.
I still watch it to this day. I've got both films on Blu-ray.
And we have our animated series, which I'm the most proud of now, because it's really been doing well at Disney Channel. And I think it's just an added dimension to the Tron mythology. It's just really, really terrific. Is it playing over there yet?
Unfortunately not, but I have actually managed to see a handful of episodes bootleg, because I'm such an impatient person that I can't wait.
I know. I just think it's stylized and everything. It's a great added dimension to it, because it kind of makes sense that Tron Uprising does to have an anime, because that's one of the unique things was we were giving birth to computer animation. And of course, you know the story that in 1982, Tron was exempt from the Academy Awards for the Technical Academy Awards for animation, because they said we had cheated, that we had used a computer. The irony is so overwhelming there, because it literally gave birth to the animation process that now all animation is done under, and has been for a long time. It's called computer animation, But at that time, they just didn't understand it, man, and it was just a little ahead of its time. And but nothing looks like it quite to this day. I think the original Tron and Uprising is such a great Uprising, and Legacy is. Really just took it these many 30 years later. This is what that game grid looks like now. And we still have the recognizers and so on and so forth. But it's a darker, more dangerous place now, the game grid. And that kind of reflects the times we're in. You always look back in the past as a more innocent, peaceful time, but as the 1980s weren't, nuclear Armageddon. But we tend to look back at a more innocent time, and Tron looks more innocent now, the original.
Quick question about the animated series. Is it, can you actually see it getting another season? And I'm just wondering, I know that she actually died in the computer game Tron 2.0, but is there any chance we could actually see Yuri back on the grid? Cindy Morgan, because I'd love to see her.
I really don't have any idea. I really don't. That would be under somebody else's purview. I mean, I work with Cindy all the time at conventions and those kind of things. So, and I know she's asked that constantly, and it's kind of it's kind of a hard question for her, because she can't really say. That's way above my pay grade, as they say, to answer that question. I'd love to see her, especially in the animated one, but she wasn't really a part of the Legacy one, so that's where Uprising kind of takes place in that interim between the original Tron story. I think the video game 2.0 has nothing to do with any of this. It's like a total different thing. It has nothing to do whatsoever with the Tron, because I did that. There's no such character as Jet or whatever it was, and that's just kind of something based on the Tron stuff. It's not really a part of the mythology, so I don't think you can go by that. I don't know. I don't think so right now. That's just my own opinion, but who knows? If there's enough of a fan uproar about it, which there seems to be, I would hope that they would listen to that.
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed. Because it would be nice to see
like I said, I work with Cindy all the time. We co-sign. We get a lot of fans come up and ask that question, and I know it's always uncomfortable for her, because she doesn't know either. And I don't think, and in all fairness, I don't think, other than it was Jeff and I, that the story is all about us anymore, the old timers. I mean, it's kind of like passing the torch on to the new one, so that this thing can keep going. It's great to have us there, Jeff especially. I mean, he's a major film star, and they certainly needed his star power to help bring it in. I bring mine, whatever I bring to it. But like people asked me also, said, well, you weren't in Tron Legacy as much. And I said, I was lucky I was in it at all. They could have very well have gone on with all different characters. I'm so happy and blessed that they did remember us. They could have just done a whole, one time I thought it was going to be a remake, that they were just going to remake it now with a more contemporary, the whole story. And thankfully it did sort of continue a story. 28, 30 years later. And because I auditioned all the young actors, I was hired to screen test with all of them way before we ever shot any of the movie, months before. And so I got to be privy to who was going to be the new generation. And as well as on Uprising, because Elijah Wood and I both kind of auditioned the show for the powers that be, and they liked what they saw and heard, and went on from there. But you never know. The Tron world is a big place, and anything can happen in it. So.
Before we move on to Lantern City, which is something I'm really looking forward to talking with you about, I've just got a very, very quick Babylon 5 question for you, and I'm just wondering, did you actually have any input in Sheridan's arc, or was it a case of, you got the script and you just went by the script? I'm just wondering if you had any input.
No, I had none at all. When you work with Joseph Michael Straczynski, he is the all-knowing, all-seeing, the creator. That world was all created for me. It was just left up to me to interpret it. I mean, Joe wrote those stories, and I didn't ever feel the need to try to do anything differently. It's quite amazing. That was an amazing experience, and I think he's such a talented writer. He's gone off to do major feature films now, which I think he certainly deserves. And he wrote me a character. I mean, John Sheridan was here. I got to do. There was really no need other than my acting contribution to it, to do anything more than that, because it was just all there. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful character. It was one of the best characters I've ever played.
Well,
I think in my recent years. So.
I've got to confess, before you came on as John Sheridan, I'd all but given up on the show. It was when you came on that, when you came in that, my ears sort of perked up, and I thought, a commander with some charisma.
Well, I won't go into why that change happened, but you've kind of hit on it there. But it was a good, interesting show, because when I was approached about that, I had worked with one of the executive producers, Douglas Netter. I did a Western for him years ago, and I did know him. And he wanted. I'm sure they had other offers. Warner Brothers was interested in other people, but they were also interested in me. It was at a period where I was like really between. Scarecrow and Mrs. King had been over for some time. I had done a lot of the Gambler movies with Kenny Rogers. I had done a lot of things, but it was mostly in the TV movie thing, and that was kind of disappearing, the TV movie. We didn't know that it was in its last decade, actually, of popularity, the 2-hour movie of the week. And so when I saw it, and I had seen some of Babylon 5 in the first season, and what I liked about it, what a marked difference it was from any of the Star Trek shows. From Next Generation, it just seemed darker. It seemed, I don't know, that's all. It really, something darker about it. The way it was shot. It was closer to what I liked about, like, say, Blade Runner and so on. And when I saw it, then when I was approached by it and I read some of the scripts, it was kind of a generic role. His name was Stryker. Sheridan came much later. Anyway, it had a number of incarnations before we came upon that name. And then I was invited out to the set, and I was hooked right from there. And I met the DP, John Flynn. I had done a movie with him before. I had a lot of my old friends on the crew, and then I saw, I realized, boy, this is a great place. And so I immediately said yes, and thus I was thrown into it. And believe me, it was not a popular decision from everybody. I mean, the fans. I mean, I appreciate your reaction, but there were fans that were so angry that Michael had been replaced by me, and especially me, Scarecrow. Scarecrow is going to be on our space station. Oh, I can't tell you. I mean, my first couple months on that show, the fan mail was, I wouldn't venture to say what the percentage was, but it was a lot against me. And so I had to kind of win over that audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was actually studying drama around about the time Babylon 5 was on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was studying theatre arts.
Yeah, there you go.
and now wound up working my own website and podcast, and God only knows what. It's funny
Cool.
how it all went.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, in doing Babylon 5, it was so theatrical. I felt very much like theater sometimes. Especially with the amazing costuming and the alien characters. We had some of our finest actors, so, and I thought, like I said, Andreas Katsoulis and Peter Jurasik, they were two of the finest actors I'd ever worked with.
Peter Jurasik was in Tron.
I know, and he did a two-part episode in Scarecrow and Mrs. King with me, too. And I didn't even remember it. And he said, "Don't you remember we worked together before?" I said, "Yeah, Tron, right?" He said, "Yeah, you were an actuary program or something. I forget what you were. Accounting program." And we laughed about that because we had come out to Hollywood around the same time, we realized, and we were traveling around the same circles. And but I still maintain Peter was one of the best actors. And then there was nobody to compete. Only Peter could have competed, and he did, with Andreas Katsoulis, who unfortunately passed away.
Oh, Andreas Katsoulis was just fantastic.
He was marvelous, because when I'd have to stare into that face and do scenes with him and those beady red eyes, and that, I didn't even know, I mean, he totally lived in that makeup. I mean, I remember the first time I kind of walked on, I hadn't met him yet, and I had to jump in and do a scene with Londo and him, and I said, "Would you please come back afterwards? I've got the rest of the day. Would you come back afterwards so I know what you look like?" After we do the scene, you take your makeup off. He said, "Well, perhaps I won't take my makeup off." I said, "Well, I'll always remember you with spots then. I mean, that's good." But he was a funny guy, So, Jakar, what a character. What a character.
He could have had a show all of his own.
Oh, I'm telling you. I think he did do one of the spin-offs that Sci-Fi Channel did. Was it the Legend of the Rangers? I think he was involved in that.
Yeah, unfortunately it didn't fare too well, though.
No, and then the Crusade didn't fare at all. And then we tried to resurrect it a little bit with Lost Tales, and it just didn't pick up. I'm asked all the time, when is there going to be another Babylon 5 project? And I said, I don't think there ever is going to be one. I think Joe has moved on. He told his story. That's what he wanted to do. And I personally do not want to repeat my career of the 90s again. There's nothing new I can give it, and I have absolutely no interest whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, I said that about Tron 28 years ago. So you never know. But I really feel that this particular situation, Tron is an ongoing thing. It's constantly evolving, whereas Babylon 5 was definitely 90s television, and we don't shoot things like that anymore. If you look at the network, we have reality TV. I think, sadly, we don't shoot things like that anymore much. The last thing was sort of Battlestar Galactica, which had a big similarity to ours, the look-wise. And I think that's the last space opera you're going to see for a while. We're not in outer space anymore.
Yeah.
Sadly. I miss that.
No, this actually kind of moves us nicely onto your new project, what you're working on now, and you're actually a producer that's involved with this and one of the creators. It's a steampunk project, Lantern City.
Yep.
Yes. I just want to ask, because it seems to come out of nowhere at Comic-Con. Sadly, I wasn't there. I couldn't afford to, part with my kidneys to get the airfare and the hotel. And stuff like that.
It's all right.
But I'm just wondering. You're really, really excited about this. I can tell by watching the video. But I'm just wondering if you'd mind telling us, kind of how it all came about, and if you where maybe you're drawing some of your inspirations from, but for the series.
Just to begin with, this is something that's been going on for probably 6 months. I did not say anything about it because we were going through writers. Another writer had attempted to start this. When we conceived this thing about, way earlier, months and months ago, it was my young partner, Trevor Crafts, who brought me this His name is Trevor Crafts. And he came, I worked with him on this little pilot that we that didn't sell, but we're still trying to sell, that he has, that we did. It was sort of a comedy. And anyway, this young man had a lot of energy, a lot of savvy. He was very tech savvy. He's a young producer trying to make his mark. I've been coming to a point in my career and life right now where I'm sitting around waiting to maybe do a guest spot, or get an audition for a guest spot on somebody else's TV series. It's frankly, and I'm not saying it's drying up for me, but I'm not working like I used to. And so I started thinking about other avenues in this business. And so when we came upon this thing, I knew that, genre-wise, I've got a very good name in the science fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever genre, television and movies. And so I was thinking, we were going around, and he's talking about this Lantern City. And I'm going, Lantern City, I love the name of it. And I love that, and he was thinking that steampunk. And I said, that's something that I've always been interested in. I always see them at the conventions, and I've seen the various versions that television sometimes is done, just a little dancing around it, though, never really doing it full on. And we got to brainstorming one night. We were about 9 hours. We sat with this storyline. This was before we had hired this other writer. And he kind of had this initial kernel, and then I took it from there. And we just went on. It was the most creative time I've had in recent years, thinking up this story and the possibilities of this story. And eventually, we didn't use this one writer, the first writer that we met with this. And then we met this young guy named, Trevor knew this guy named Matthew Daly. And Matthew has delivered, I think, a tremendously deep, rich story with rich characters. The very things that, with my experience with Babylon 5 and so on, I've done so many television series. I think this is what I brought to it, was the idea of very much like a saga like Babylon 5, but let's bring it up to the way we shoot things today, what kind of programming is going on today. And I just think the steampunk world, I didn't know a lot about it, but I know what I like and what I visually liked. And I said, I'm excited by this because it's a world, I believe, the mainstream audience, television audience, worldwide, does not know anything of. They may have heard the word, they may have seen it, but it's still basically a cultish type of thing, a subgenre in the science fiction world, a Victorian futurism, if you will. And it's got a lot of people loving it. But it's still very much not in the mainstream. And today, thinking of as a television producer, you've got to find something to tell your story that's going to be different. It's very hard to do nowadays. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it is.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Because I've noticed that you get someone, they'll come out with a great idea, and then there'll be about 1,000 copies of that same idea.
Well, but this hasn't happened with this, and yet steampunk has been introduced in some films. I think League of Extraordinary Gentlemen had some good set pieces, some good ideas based on the graphic. The graphic novel, but it didn't turn out to be a great, groundbreaking movie.
It's because it deviated too much from the actual book.
Yeah, and I just think it was lousy movie making. I'm sorry, it's just not good. Sean Connery, one of my great cinema heroes, tried to have his name taken off of it. He was not happy with it, and I'd follow him anywhere. Anyway, the whole idea was, and I thought of this. We were brainstorming, and then to find the right writer to put it down on paper and also enhance it. That's what you look for. And so I think we're very early in the process yet. We've got a website up. We went to Comic-Con, and that's when we decided. I actually let it out in Twitterverse a week or two earlier. I hinted at it. And because I always have fans asking what's coming up next, and I had nothing to tell them. Other than I'm doing Tron Uprising, which, like I said, I'm very proud of and promoting still. But something of my own, I had nothing to really point to. So basically this is, I'm shooting very high. We're aiming very high with this. And I'm just excited about the script. I'm excited about the idea also of I think it's a very innovative approach in television is to also to be co-developed by the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. But that's the kind of world we're in today with these new medias and everything. Mm-hmm. The contributions people can make. The steampunk community has jumped at this. We have such reaction, especially down there, and then it just went all over the place. We had so many people, especially in the maker community of steampunk, the prop makers, the costuming, and all that sort of thing that we want to encourage to come to us with the designs and stuff like that, the innovations that they have. I've got a couple of people that are signed on already. Tom Williford is very big in the steampunk community here in the States. I can't imagine what you have in the UK there. Oh my God!
Oh yeah, it's all over London. When I do get to a convention, I come across cosplayers dressed as steampunk characters all the time.
Mm-hmm. Cosplay.
I've even read a bit of steampunk. These.
Well, there's many. We've even had some of the authors respond. Various authors that write in the genre. I think they're ready for it too, and I think its time has kind of come. In a way, whether it's us that do it or somebody else. But I think there's something in which, in a steampunk world, stories can be told. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about it, and I'm not trying to make there's a sort of what I have noticed in my investigation, there's kind of a hokey side, there's kind of a jokey, vampires and zombies and all those other genres which are getting so tiring. I look forward, and this is just my opinion, I look forward to the day when not everything, that's what's taken the place of science fiction, zombies. Yeah. Now, what more can we do with zombies? You tell me that hasn't been done. Mm-hmm. I think hopefully it's going to start waning a little bit. And vampires, too. I mean, and they've worked their way into the steampunk thing and a lot of supernatural stuff like that. That is not this project. Mm-hmm. This is going to be more of a straight-on saga with some very exciting characters. It's going to be more of an adventure story. It's much more, it's violent, yes. It deals in themes of, there are two questions essentially asked, so there is a love story involved in this. It asks to how far would you go to be with the one you love, and how far would you go to survive? And those are two very elemental questions, but it's a show about, politics, crime and punishment, class conflict, fear and innovation and things like that. So, and it's a world that is it's a city which is a world unto itself. It's a darker version, but with all the intrigues that say Game of Thrones or Boardwalk Empire.
Mm-hmm. It's something that actually struck me when I read all the character breakdowns and stuff like that on the website. And I thought, well, so like with the socio-political landscape being pretty much protests against cuts to the public sector workers and such, it seems like you got a lot of potential storylines here in Atlantic City.
Yes, I think so. I hope we do. Yeah, I'm glad you see that. But you know what I'm saying? There's a more frivolous side, a kind of a satirical side to some steampunk as well, in the literature and the things that I've seen. And I would like to be able to, in the current climate of the kind of television making going on right now, and like I said, I'm being very ambitious here. I can only give it a try. That's right. We're having visual stuff now because we haven't even gone into anyone specifically to try to pitch this to, because I need to get a much more visual package together, and that's what we're working on now. We're waiting on some illustrations being made for us. We have artists working for us right now, and then we got to go through that. We have a script. We have a great pilot script and 6 potential episodes. We actually have 10 episodes, but we're going to go in with 6 to give them an idea. But when you go into pitch, it's a very different world to pitch storylines and things. But I want to have something visual, because the steampunk, a whole element of portraying this is going to be this very extremely rich visual world.
Yeah.
And so I have to have that. I have to show these idiots. Oh, did I say that? I have to show these wonderfully imaginative studio heads and network people. It shows you I've been around a long time, Ian.
Yeah.
Dealt with these people on every level, and some of the most unimaginable people in the world. I mean, you'd think in a business where it requires imagination, it's much more like talking to corporate heads.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I will have to be involved in all the other minutiae that no one you can possibly believe about budgets, monies, how expensive is it. That will be a great deal, have a great deal to do with it. Mm-hmm. Because what we're talking about is going to be somewhat expensive. We were in touch. When we were in San Diego, we met with Weta, Peter Jackson's company. Cool. The guys there that do the wonderful ray guns and all the props. They've got a whole steampunk element to that company. They were thrilled about this. I mean, if we could get them to contribute, this would be a major coup, and I think we can. Because they're very excited about it. And that's what they do. They make props for films. They have all their Lord of the Rings and Hobbit stuff down there. But they have some great stuff. And I've just been overwhelmed with the response from the steampunk community. Of course, there are going to be people that are going to be naysayers like they were when I entered Babylon 5. They're going to go, what? How the hell? Tron is going to do steampunk? These are going to be a hardcore steampunk people that don't want their little cult messed with.
I think it's.
Well, I don't want to be perceived as some Hollywood yahoo coming in to exploit steampunk for us and then do it badly. I want to have their participation in it, and you're not going to win over everybody, but that's part of it also.
But I think it's kind of funny because you're going from Tron and Babylon 5, which are futuristic universes, into a universe which arguably is a parallel universe to Earth. If I read the brief right, yes. Which is sort of like. Using Victorian technology, which is sort of like a level beyond what Victorian technology would have been.
Right. We call it Victorian futurism. Mm-hmm. That's a crazy term, but I read that somewhere. I love it. But I mean, it still has to be, this is an alternative world as well that we're portraying to this world, to this contemporary world. And so it's timeless in a way. I once remember that I read a book called The Two Georges by Harry Turtledove, mm-hmm. and I think it was, what's his name, the actor that co-wrote it with him, but it was about if the American Revolution had never happened. And it would be, British America, and it was set around the turn of the century, and it was run by steam. I think it was the first time I started, and giant zeppelins with steam powered and everything, and cars and all this kind of thing. And that was the first time I read, and I know Harry. That was the first book I had ever read of his. And he knew, this was way back, in early 90s. So he was very well of the steampunk, aware of the steampunk thing. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, it's an alternate world, so it isn't it's not in the past, it's not in the future. It's what it is,
Well, I can actually tell you a really cool comic series. Well, it's not a comic series, it's actually a graphic novel. There's two of them at the moment. They're by Brian Tobert, and they're called Granville, and the first one's just called Granville, and the second one's called Granville Mon Amour. And it's a steampunk detective series.
Very good. We need that kind of thing. Yeah.
It's a steampunk detective series with a difference in that all the characters are anthropomorphic, and the human beings are actually an underclass referred to as dollfaces.
See, there's so many elements you can do. It's unlimited, I think. Mm-hmm. And I just think it would, as an entertainment value, because that's the way I have to look at it. I'm going to have there are going to have to be things that, yes, in the steampunk world they're going to go, well, I don't know, but it also has to appeal to a broader audience. And I just think it's so rich and so different that I think it has a chance of capturing an audience that has never heard the word steampunk before, if we do it right. And that's what we're striving to do right now. Mm-hmm. So, but it's a long, slow process, and we're only in its beginnings. But I wanted to get it out there, and like Comic-Con was the best way to announce it, with all the other things that were competing for those 4 days mm-hmm. for media.
When it was out at Comic-Con, we probably pounced on it within the first 15 minutes of it being announced.
Great.
I've got a friend that actually, she watches what's going on at Comic-Con. I watch what's going on at Comic-Con. We try to actually, post absolutely everything, which is impossible because it's just one person running the website at the moment. Well, actually, there's Patrick as well, but it's, I do quite a lot of it. And, you know, we try to pounce on everything. We look for videos, any sort of media that sort of like saves me from having to do too much writing. So I can get as much out there as possible. And
well, you know, there was a lot out there too. I mean, Comic-Con is well, you know, there was so much media there. That's the other lure of it, was that we had if I could get to it, and plus I was working all the Friday of it for Disney for Tron Uprising, and I didn't get to mention it a lot there. But the fact that because that wasn't the purpose of that day, for my own personal stuff, but. No, it just gave me a venue in which to get the message out, and that's what you try to do, because like we're going to depend so much on what the steampunk community ideas and props and costuming and all those things it can contribute or at least give us ideas for. So perfect place for it.
Well,
I walked out on the outside of the convention center on this big porch, and there had to have been 100 people dressed. I felt like I'd just walked into a crowd scene from Lantern City. I swear to God. There were a couple of guys there, because this is what I'm talking about, the jokey aspect of it. There was a steampunk Buzz Lightyear. Now, it's very funny, but, you know, that's not what we're going to have in Lantern City. Lantern City is a serious place. And when you read it, you'll go. It's a frightening place, in fact. It's... the negotiation is done violently there. There are no rights there. You have only two choices: fight or submit.
Yep.
So it's a tough world there, and that's with very little negotiation. And so anyway,
it's funny you're actually saying all this, and right now they're actually replaying a clip from the 1979 general election here in England when Margaret Thatcher got into power. I got you. So, well, that's. I mean, this is parallel worlds. This is an alternate world, but it's got to have themes in which we identify with today. You know, I think that's what good science fiction is, and isn't. But I just think we've seen so many of the other things that this is in just in general a world that the mainstream audience would, I think, go, wow, what is this? You know, and want to come back to. That's what you want in a TV series. You got one night, and if nobody comes back, you're sunk. Yep.
So you got to have something that you want people to be intrigued by and want to come to every week. So I think it's a broader canvas. Try to do a movie is a different thing because it's only like 2 hours. You can't really explore this world. But who knows? I mean, I'm open to anything. If I can get this to a screen of whatever it is, if it's the big or the small, or some people have mistakenly thought it was a web series. That's not our intention. I do want to dispel that. I don't think I've mentioned it before, but there were some, I think, confusion from Comic-Con. But anyway, that was it.
One last question, very quickly. I wanted to ask this because my friend was, asked me to ask this. Basically, in your call to arms for the series, you're actually inviting fans to send their artwork and such to actually help you design the world. Are you actually open to story ideas or perhaps poetry as well? Or is it just the visual elements that you're looking to help with?
We're just looking for the visual elements right now because we've got the story ideas and stuff like that already. You'd have to become familiar with the world that we're doing, so before we could do that. Maybe that's further on down the line. Let's get the thing sold first. I've got to get it up and going. You know,
your excitement for it's quite infectious. You know, I mean, I saw like. I checked out the website, I read all the bios and everything on there, and I thought, this sounds really good.
I'm glad you got that. Good. And we're doing something right because this is very ambitious. It kind of scares me, in fact, it's so ambitious. But I hope we have something here. You never know. I'm trying to catch a wave in a way. It's funny because my partner Trevor emailed me one morning. He said, "Hey, take a look at this." And I went to this link, and he showed me an ad for Prada, the high-end fashion line. And the title of the article was "Prada Goes Steampunk" for this year. And it had 4 guys dressed in these incredible suits and shirts and vests and things like that had definitely a kind of a somewhat of a, you could tell, a Victorian feel to it. The coats there were long coats, and so on and so forth. And who were the models? Gary Oldman, Garrett Hedlund, Jamie Bell, and Willem Dafoe. And I said, oh my God, there's my A-list cast right there. You know? And so that said something to me, that Prada goes steampunk. That said something to me. Has said culturally, the word steampunk is out there. They must have known that, you know, marketing-wise. I'm just talking about marketing. And I'm going, wow, maybe we're catching a wave because sooner or later this was going to be more mainstream. I would like to be on that sooner.
I was in the Panasonic store the other day looking at TVs and radios. It's a Panasonic dealership that I go to every now and again. And I noticed that, you know, he's actually got, you know, the old style radios, as in, you know, sort of like reproductions of the very old style radios, only they've got all the modern components in.
That's kind of saying that, I think. Yeah. That's kind of, we're sort of reaching back through some of those classic old designs and then filling in with, like, computers are being done up. There's these guys that can trick out your computer to look like it's this vintage piece of machinery, you know, from like a steampunk age, and but yet it's your current, you know, your current screen and everything. So yeah, I think it says something. I think you know, it's funny, but boy, that Prada thing just jumped out at me. And I'm like, wow. And here's young Garrett Hedlund, who would be an ideal case for the hero of our story, the young hero of our story. And Gary Oldman certainly is no, I mean, if you look at the Bram Stoker's Dracula that he did, there was a lot of that steampunkish feel to it, and the London sequences, you know, and the way he was dressed, and top hat and the glasses and all that sort of thing. And, you know, I just don't want it to come off like farcical looking. It has to have a serious feel to it. And that, if we ever get to this point where we're having costuming done, then we're going to have to be very serious in that too. I mean, it's got to be functional, not too frivolous. Some frivolous things depend on the character, if it works for the character. So much to think about, Ian. So much. That's why you hope you put together a good team, because you can't do it all yourself.
It just sounds like a fantastic idea to me. You know, the whole story. Another thing that I like was the you know, your description of the outsiders. You know, it kind of struck me that these outsiders have been torn from this earth and wound up on the Pyrongham Earth. So you've got that fish out of water sort of thing going on. That's
all a mystery as to where these people came. All of that is going to be very mysterious because these are the storylines you'll later delve into. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's also those characters from our version of Earth that are actually going to be the characters that hook the viewers in, as they will be our eyes and ears.
Yeah. You know? So it's, you know, ambitious.
It's very big.
But we've got the wheels in motion, and we'll see what we can do here. But I appreciate your guys' help. I mean, you're certainly helping a great deal by doing what you're doing now. And the more you can get out, and the more you can help get the word out and get people's opinions and so on and so forth, it would help me a great deal.
I'm quite happy to continue working with you guys to get, you know, keep getting news out there and you know, any news that you come up with, you know. I'm more than happy to help, you know, because, you know, to be honest, we need new science fiction, and you know, we need new science fiction on the television. You know, we need new television that makes you think. And kind of getting fed up of a diet of reality TV crap, and you know,
it's killing me. It's killing me. It's been killing my acting career for some time.
Well, it's been killing everyone.
And I thought this would go away, that the public would tire, but it doesn't seem to. There's more in the works coming, and it just killed two of the genres that I worked in, and that, you know, Babylon 5 would have never be able to compete nowadays. They wouldn't even be thinking of this kind of programming anymore.
Well, actually,
that's why I wouldn't go to the regular networks. I have to go to some cable type of thing, and that's what I'd like. I mean, my dream, if I had my wish list, my bucket list would be something like HBO here, or Stars, or that type of thing. One of those kind of networks.
I'd go to AMC. They're the channel that has The Walking Dead, and they're kind of like up and coming.
Yes, AMC is a beautiful one, and we want to try to get there too. I mean, these are my dreams. I just, but what's happened with a lot of the other reality has seeped its way into the History Channel, Discovery Channel, A&E, though, they just did a wonderful, but what encourages me is Kevin Costner got the Hatfields and McCoys on the History Channel, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. And the ratings were through the roof. I mean, it had the largest ratings in a mini-series format. So even if we're only that, I mean, we can change it. My hope would be a series, but even if the only way we could do it is in a mini-series format, I'm content with that. It depends on what they want to buy. We're malleable. We can change it and everything. So anyway,
mm-hmm. Well, I just want to, quickly say it's been absolutely wonderful having the opportunity to speak with you about it and everything. I mean, there's so much that you've done. I just couldn't possibly squeeze it all into one interview. There's a Western film that I remember seeing you in. It was, I think it was early.
Oh, I did a lot of Western. I started in Westerns, to tell you the truth. That was my first big break in Hollywood.
Oh, I remember this one stuck in my mind. It was about, I think it was about a ranch it was about a rancher, and it was sort of like it was running parallel with the development of the U.S. Railroad, and there was sort of like some corrupt sort of like landowner that was trying to sort of like bully people off the land. And think in that you kind of like.
I did so many of them. How long ago was it?
I think it was around about 2003. I can't remember the exact plot in that down to part because I've only actually seen it.
Oh, yes. Oh, Aces and Eights it was called.
That's the one. Which
was The Dead Man's Hand, Aces and Eights, with Ernest Borgnine, who just passed away.
Oh, yeah.
And a dear friend of mine. And Casper Van Dien, who's a good buddy of mine, too. I may be doing a movie with him next month.
I really enjoyed that.
Gets all the money.
I really enjoyed that film.
Yeah, it was a tough one, too. That was a hard one to make. It was so hot and desolate where we were, and we all got shot up in that one, too. Yeah, I enjoyed that one a great deal.
Well,
because Casper got to be the hero, and I could be the anti-hero.
Well, you've kind of like you've kind of like the anti-hero that finds redemption right near the end, and I thought.
Yeah, I like that. That's always a role. That's the plum role, isn't it? Who finds redemption in the end and then ultimately pays for it. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get to really live it out. He was killed doing the right thing.
He wasn't really a good guy or a bad guy then. That he was sort of like more of a conflicted character, who's sort of like just been worn down by cynicism.
He was worn down, a drunk. He was just done, and. Slowly walking. My opinion was he was slowly walking towards his grave anyway. He was just however it was going to happen, and so he chose to change sides. And but he was dead to begin with. He was he was going to die. Mm-hmm. So anyway, die violently too, and I did. I had all those squibs going off on me. Oy, I tell you. I was hurt, and I actually got shot in the eye in that gunfight sequence. And Casper was looking over at me. We're behind this dead horse. His horse was supposed to have been shot out from under him, and he's looking at me, and my eye is bleeding. And he's going, and we kept doing the scene. And he said afterwards, "Oh my God, man, I thought your eye had been burst." I said, "Me too, man," but I just kept going. No one, because one of the squibs in the coat that I was wearing shot directly up into my eye. Mm-hmm. And I just kept going.
Well, that just goes to show people that think being a Hollywood actor is glamorous. That isn't. That isn't.
That's a prime story. Yes, it's not all glamour. It was at any given time. It was about 115 degrees. I don't know what that is Celsius, but 115 degrees out there. It was so hot. Mm-hmm. And that was all real sweat you were seeing on us, all dirty sweat and everything. But we had a lot of fun, and I think it turned out to be a pretty edgy piece, and it did pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, so. It caught my eye when I seen it in TV Guide initially, because first off, you was in it, and Ernest Borgnine were in it, and Ernest Borgnine, I've always loved, his work as well. I mean, I remember seeing Mark when I was a kid.
Yeah, I shouldn't say poor Ernie. He was laughing all the way until the day he died. He's 95 years old. He had a rich life and a wonderful acting career, and left us with, so many wonderful moments in cinema and television. So, in the end, that's all an actor can hope for. And he was very proud of being an actor. That's all he wanted to be. He would always say, "No, none of that, Mr. Borgnine. Just call me Ernie." He was that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a pleasure to have known those guys.
I've seen an interview of him on YouTube. I think it was about 4 years ago, and I can't remember what it was for exactly because I didn't show the full interview. They just showing this one clip, and the interviewer was asking him. He says, look, you're sort of like you're 91 years old. How do you do it? I mean, you only look about 60, 75. And Ernie sort of like whispers over into his ear conspiratorially, and he says, well, the truth is, I masturbate every night. I just wet myself up in that.
Oh, that was Ernie. He'd still tend to shock people with things. He was a very funny guy. Very, very funny. He once told me, well, I'll tell you, I have a 3-story house. I go up and down the stairs 10 times a day. That's how I stay fit. And I said, really? He said, no. No, he was just kidding me. He was just kidding along with me. So, I know.
That just came out in, whatever role he was in, he sort of like, you knew it was Ernest Borgnine, but he was also playing a character. He was just such a wonderful, actor to watch.
Yeah, he was always with that big toothy grin of his. Yeah, and I was just in Oklahoma City with him. I was got the wonderful honor of being inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame, Hall of Great Western Performers. And last year I buried my absolute mentor in this business, James Arness, who passed away at 88. And he was the man who was most significant in my acting life because his decision for the casting people, he had casting approval, and he wanted, I didn't know him, but he wanted me. He saw my screen test, and he said, I think this young fellow here is the guy we want, and the network didn't want him. And the first big role I had was the role of Luke McCann in How the West Was Won. And if he hadn't made that decision and picked, frankly, Richard Hatch as the other guy, I probably wouldn't be talking to you here, because that decision changed my entire life. It gave me a career. The events that have happened in my life are subsequent, So it's funny how that happens. But strangely enough, Ernie was with me to receive the award on stage at the Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
And that was just about 2 months ago. So that was the last time I physically saw him. But at that age, he went rather fast. I mean, he was in fine fettle that evening. So,
well, I'd just like to say it's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
We'll check in every once in a while. We'll talk, okay?
Yep, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. You've always been, one of my favourite actors on television, and in some of the films that I've seen you in, I think there's another one I've seen you in with Bo Derek, where you sort of like, it was, played a murderer. I think you played a murderer, and there was a bit of ambiguity as to whether you did it or not.
Well, they never cast that. Once in a while I'll get cast in something like that, and I always surprise them a little bit, so, because they always think I'm just Mr. Joe, straight-on good guy. And actually, I like playing those other kind of roles much more, So, but I thank you, Ian. That's very nice of you to say. So.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for your time. It's been absolutely brilliant speaking to you.
Okay, Ian. Thank you very much.
The Babylon Project was our last best hope for peace. A self-contained world 5 miles long, located in neutral territory. A place of commerce and diplomacy for 250,000 humans and aliens. A shining beacon in space, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the third age of mankind, the year the Great War came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations. The year is 2259. The name of the place is Babylon 5.
That was our interview with Bruce Boxleitner. And if you'd like to learn more about Nancy City, you can head on over to RandomCityTV.com, and you can find out more about the show that Bruce is working to try and bring to television right there at RandomCityTV.com. It's all one word, so I'll type it in the chat room for those that are in there. And that's where you can find out more about the show. In a few weeks' time, we'll also have Trevor Crafts, Bruce's creative partner on Lantern City, on the show. But that's going to be a few weeks away from now. Anyway, now it's time for our weekly comic segment, and this is also kind of pre-recorded because the person I do this with, he can't be available to come on live. So this is This Week in Comics.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather. Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
I'd like to welcome Bruce Boxleitner to the show. How are you doing, Bruce?
I'm very good, thank you. Very, very good.
Okay, well, first off, I'd just like to ask you the question. I'd like to ask this a lot of actors because I know that a lot of actors have had a different journey into acting. So I'm just wondering, how did you get into the acting? Is it something you always wanted to do, or did you just find out at a certain age that you kind of had the bug?
Well, I think I fell into it in high school here. I've always been an imaginative. I was always an imaginative child. I always liked movies, television. I was an avid television watcher back then in the 60s, and so I mean, I just sort of naturally fell into it. I kind of wandered into an audition in I think it was my sophomore year, second year of high school, and I tried out for the fall play and got it, which was unusual, I guess, for a sophomore at that time at that school. But anyway, I got it, and I don't know why I wandered in there. I think there were a lot of girls in the drama guild. I had played baseball. I was a common American kid at that time. I played a lot of baseball, and I didn't make it on the basketball team. So I was looking for something else. But I think what appealed to me is there was a way in which I could not be Bruce Boxleitner for young parts. I had done very well on the Broadway show that I was in. I had the lead in fact, with another young guy named Ted Danson, but I don't know whatever happened to him. I think he had a TV series called Cheers or something like that. But anyway, he did very well for himself. But at that time, we were all just young actors hitting around off Broadway and Broadway and trying to make our mark. And then eventually I just ended up, for various reasons, I ended up going out west and saying, I'm going to give it a try out in Hollywood. If I have to sleep on a park bench, it's a lot warmer out there than it is in New York City. So, but basically, I had auditioned for films. I was auditioning for plays and stuff like that in New York, and it seemed like they kept casting everybody out in Los Angeles, even though they would come to New York to look at new talent. And somebody suggested, well, why don't you go out there? And it's something I had dreamed of doing anyway, and I just did it.
Well, one film that probably propelled you into into being a well-known face internationally was Tron, which I believe didn't do so well, at the time it came out in 1982. What I'm curious about is, when you got the script for Tron, did you actually have doubts about it? Did you have trouble understanding it? Because there's a lot of language in Tron, such as user and stuff like that, to do with
and programs and all that. Yeah, I agree. I didn't know what it was saying. But there was a lot of history before that. I was on a Western TV series that I think played over there as well. That was very popular. So I had already a good profile going in the business. I was one of the many thousands that met on the original Star Wars. I remember that. And I remember standing in line when it opened and going, oh, shoot. Boy, this was a great role. I wish I had gotten it. That was Luke Skywalker. But in looking back on it now, I'm glad I didn't, because I wouldn't be talking to you now, probably. Unfortunately, that role kind of had a curse alongside it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't understand Tron whatsoever, but it was a big Disney feature. I kind of told my agent, I think we should turn it down, and he told me I was an idiot. I was doing a Western when I was out in the middle of Arizona reading this script, sitting on a horse, and I put it in my saddlebag, going, oh, this is a piece of crap. I'm not going to do this. Then I got back to Los Angeles after I was done shooting, and I met at Disney, and I met Steven Lisberger and production team, and I knew that Jeff Bridges was in it, was signed, Boxleitner, and I could, and through a character I could express myself, and I think I learned that very early on. Not that I was trying to hide from whom I was, but it was a great way to express yourself, And when you're a teenager, you want to get a lot of things out, and there are very articulate ways of doing it other than that. And so I know a lot of my buddies got into music and bands, and I kind of played with that stuff too with them. But my main thing was the drama in school, and that kind of set me on my course. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I started to realize early on that maybe I wanted to be an actor, at least by the end of high school. I wasn't a great student because of it, but and then I managed to get into a drama school in Chicago, which I lived near, and Illinois, and it was prestigious. It was for regional theater, for training in the classics and things like that. So I had a really nice, solid background in that way. And I started after I left the Goodman Theater there. I started to work my way in local theater, and then eventually wound up in a play that took me to Broadway. And at a very young age, I was just 21, 22. And I think I turned 21 in New York. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a long time ago.
Wow.
And that sort of set me on my way. I mean, I was always trying, and I always admired him as a contemporary. I always admired his work. I had worked with his father prior to that, Lloyd Bridges, and I knew all about him. So I thought, great. And then I was looking at it more. I'm going, it's kind of Star Wars. Only it's not in outer space. It looks like it's in a computer world, whatever the heck that is. But it looks kind of cool. And I saw some, sketches and stuff. And then I saw a little bit of footage that they had compiled to show what the process was. And it was fascinating. And I went, you know what? This is something very different. If they're interested in me, I ought to do it. And I did. And we had such high expectations, and we were breaking such new ground. I wasn't really aware of that so much at the time as just afterwards. And then it kind of came out with this sort of lackluster performance. And but strangely enough now, 30 years later, I might add, it is more popular than ever. So it's amazing. It's an amazing thing to me.
I mean, the first time I seen it was probably around about 1984 when it came out on video. And I put it on, and and I pretty much got it right away because I was going through a bit of a computer geek stage back then, so I knew what a lingo was. So
yeah, but you understood it though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because did you play it in the arcade?